Hello there, I'm Gloria Makarenko. Personal reflections and wild forays. This is Our Vancouver. Coming up, snakes and snails and salamander tails. That's what we go looking for in the wet wilds of BC. She's a chef, sommelier, and goes foraging in the woods. We'll taste the wild things that Robin Kort is cooking up. But first, a bittersweet story about a South Korean mother and son and the filmmaker behind the award-winning film Riceboy Sleeps. A Vancouver film director is being lauded for his latest film. It's called Riceboy Sleeps, and it's screening right now at the Vancouver International Film Festival. And it's kind of a bittersweet coming-of-age tale about a South Korean mother who brings her son here to Metro Vancouver, and they kind of struggle to adjust to life here in the 1990s. So with us today are Anthony Shim and Yoon, and they're here to tell us more about it today. Hello there and welcome.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Okay, so this is a fascinating film. The story, I'm sure, is familiar to a lot of people who do immigrate from another country, but to what extent, Anthony, was this autobiographical?
It's, I've been calling it, it's semi-autobiographical. It is largely inspired by, the experiences that I and my family had in the 90s growing up here in Vancouver and on the Vancouver Island. And then a lot of it is also by, stories of close friends and family who are also immigrants during that time. There's a lot of stuff that's fictionalized, but, the meat of it is quite personal.
Yeah, it's personal, and you're in it too. You role as shall I say, the love interest. The character that you play. You end up meeting the character Simon in here. What has this experience been like for you?
It was incredible to make a film in Canada because I'm from Korea, so it was just amazing. Also, everyone was so nice, and I like this city, the Vancouver, and yeah.
Well, it is. So the location, it feels very authentically, again, 90s in this area. But let's talk about some of the things that immigrants can face, the racism, that struggle to fit in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't set out to make a film about racism.
No.
I did, the intention was to tell a story about a mother and son who are dealing with generational trauma and undealt grief. But then in making a film that that was so personal, it had to do with the immigrant experience and touches on racism and cultural differences. But all of those things, I wanted to portray them in a really sort of non-judgmental, observational way, and so that these are seen as things, part of the experience that allows these characters to become who they ultimately become.
Yes, and I would never say that it is a film about racism at all. It is simply beautiful how you lay it all out, and it's got such texture, the subtlety of the colors. So where were you going with that in terms of your use of film?
Well, I mean, a lot of that credit has to go to our director of photography, Christopher Liu. From the beginning, we wanted to create a movie that felt like we wanted the experience of watching the film to be similar to looking through your childhood photo album. Or at least those who grew up at a time when we had photos and those photos went into an album, not a hard drive. And so we wanted a look that was similar to the photographs that we grew up looking at. And so we made sure that we shot in the right kind of film and the right kind of camera.
Yeah, but I mean, the acting is phenomenal as well. But I'm fascinated by the fact, in Korea, you're a dancer, and you've never acted before?
I have a little bit of acting experience, but I never be a lead actress.
Like, this is your first full feature-length film?
Yeah, and this was my first audition ever.
First. So how did you know that? Is this a Star is Born moment, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was telling everyone when I saw the tape. We'd been searching all across North America and in Korea. I'd looked at every tape that was sent my way, and then our casting director in Korea said, is a bit of a wild card, but there's this dancer, but I think she's really got that it factor that people talk about. And so then when we saw the tape, it was undeniable, from the first tape she sent.
Undeniable, Yoon. It was undeniable. You were spectacular. Seriously, you draw people into the screen. You draw people into your own drama with some of those scenes, and that protective, fierce mother that comes through. How much of that is your personality?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, but I don't have son, but we have very strong relationship made together with my 2 other kids, who is in the movie. So based on that strong relationship in reality, I could make it, yeah.
Well, it's very convincing. It's very, very convincing. What about the South Korean locations and your connection to those places, Anthony?
Well, the town that we shot in is actually where my grandfather was born and raised, and so a lot of the people that are there now are distant relatives of mine. So that part of the story is actually quite autobiographical, and so I had that area in mind when I was writing it. So then, once we were ready to shoot, we went over there and we made sure everything was set up, and it's so beautiful there.
Okay, last one. Kevin. Anyone have Kevin?
Oh, sí, my building manager. His name is Kevin. Pero está bien, it's good. Kevin, it's good.
Yeah, no problem. You think Kevin a good name?
Yeah, it's good, like Kevin Costner.
I know there are so many touching scenes in the film, but what about when the workers, Yoon and her co-workers that work on an assembly line, they're gathered around a table, and the importance of they've come from different countries, speak different languages, have different names for their children, but they're choosing English or Canadian names for their kids. What's behind that?
Well, I mean, it was the same thing that I experienced and all of the other immigrant friends and family experience. I mean, how many Asian people do you know that are named Simon and David and Kevin? It's not a coincidence. We didn't all fall in love with those names. It was, our attempts, I think, especially back then, to try and fit in best we could. And those were the most common names that were presented to us.
Even though your son in the film wanted to be Michael Jordan.
In actuality, I wanted to be Michael Jackson. But then it changes for the film.
Congratulations on a beautiful, beautiful work. I hope it goes far, and I hope many, many people see it. And what a pleasure to meet you, Yoon, as well. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stefan, this is Bettina, we are from Germany, and this is our Vancouver.
I love this part of the show because this is where we get to showcase some of the photographs that you send in, so thank you in advance. Now, Bikram Rijal sent in this classic late evening Vancouver shot, a murder of crows in the sky. Thank you so much for this one, Bikram. And Brandy Sawatsky spied this deer hiding along the Diez Vistas Trail in Balcara. That dappled sunlight is great camouflage. Thank you. And finally, thank you to Caitlin Grabovi, who took this amazing photo over Boya Lake near the Yukon-BC border. Simply stunning colors. Thank you. And if you are out and about with your camera, why not forward your favorite photos to us to share? Send them to bcphotos@cbc.ca. That's bcphotos@cbc.ca. Now, every 4 years, millions of sockeye salmon make their way up the Fraser River. But their population is under threat by climate change and habitat loss. Now, a federal program aims to help recover the declining salmon stocks. We'll show you how.
Okay, Paul.
Father-son duo Dane and Paul Chevelle are out to catch their sockeye quota.
Doing it up the Fraser River is, in my opinion, one of the best runs we have along the coast.
The pair are commercial fishermen and fish under a commercial license issued by the Department of Fisheries. This year, a small window opened to allow fishermen like the Chevelles to fish, but that's not always the case. In some years, there are simply not enough salmon to allow the commercial fishery to take place.
What's up there here? Just not biting? I guess not.
Climate change and habitat loss are a factor, but the federal government also thinks there are too many fishing boats and licenses. By the end of this year, a licence buyback program will begin to pay fishermen to leave the industry.
Too many boats chasing too few fish. The industry is crying for rationalization, and the way that we're going to achieve it is by taking out some of the fishing capacity, and the way we're doing that is through a government-funded buyback.
But there's concern the program is too narrow in its focus.
You take the salmon boat I work on, for example, there are 5 hardworking people on that vessel, and none of us will see anything from the proposed license buyback because we don't own the license.
The government has not provided a timeline or pricing on the buyback of the licenses. In a statement to CBC News, DFO says fishermen will be able to sell their licenses at market value this year and acknowledges the impact it will have on the industry. For Dane Chevelle, the coming changes should be a wake-up call.
Get a job outside of this industry because it's no place to build a future.
A changing industry responding to a changing world. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, we've got some disappointing news for those of you who love the Halloween train in Stanley Park. It is one of the most popular local attractions, and it's going to be cancelled for a 3rd year in a row. Yeah, the Vancouver Park Board says it's been forced to derail the ghost train because of safety concerns.
It's a different scary surprise than expected this Halloween season. The Stanley Park Ghost Train is off the rails yet again, but this time it's because the antique engines are more than 60 years old and the aging parts are hard to find. The Park Board says the train has not passed a recent safety inspection. And last winter, the train was also plagued with service issues. There's only one manufacturer producing most of what's needed to fix the train.
I think the best analogy is sort of picturing your sort of old classic car if it was sitting in your garage for 2 years without being driven and without being maintained because folks are off doing other really high priority pieces of work. You know, parts seize, parts rust. And it just doesn't function the way you would once you finally pull it out of the garage.
The last ghost train ran in 2019 and was attended by more than 40,000 people. The original railway in 1947 was a child-sized train, with the first railroad opening back in 1964 for adults, and has been a popular attraction ever since. Although the train behind me here at Stanley Park won't be running in time for a spooky surprise at Halloween, the focus is to get it up and running again in time for the holidays. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Coming up, Science Smart's Johanna Wagstaff takes a closer look at post-tropical storm Fiona's brutal power and what it could mean for our future. After leaving destruction in the Caribbean, Fiona was set on a collision course with a cold front tracking across North America. Normally, hurricanes begin to weaken as they move farther north, away from their tropical water energy source. But as these two systems merged, the cold front pulled Fiona into a warm ocean current. That meant Fiona maintained Category 4 intensity for much longer, feeding off those warm waters that also happened to be running 5 to 10 degrees warmer than normal. That gave Fiona the fuel to go much farther north than a major hurricane usually would. Then, when the waters began to cool just south of Nova Scotia, the storm morphed. It began to use the energy from the cold front instead of the warm waters to maintain its strength. That made it act like a nor'easter fueled by a clash of air masses. When Fiona made landfall, it was truly a hybrid storm. Winds, rain, and storm surge of a hurricane, but the size of a long-duration superstorm. But let's go back to those warm waters. Why were they still so warm this time of the year? Scientists are studying how climate change influenced Fiona, but we know most of the warming caused by carbon emissions is absorbed by the world's oceans, making them hotter and meaning more fuel for hurricanes.
While that doesn't necessarily mean more storms, evidence has shown us these storms are getting stronger faster and merging with storms over land in new ways, creating new challenges for coastal communities, including in Canada.
Johanna, thanks very much. You're watching Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, not everyone feels comfortable gathering food from the outdoors. You know, wild mushrooms, they can be dangerous if you pick the wrong ones. But here in Vancouver, there's a company that guides would-be foragers to safely pick and prepare everything from lobster and cauliflower mushrooms to sea kelp and spruce tips. So with us today is Robin Kort. Robin is the owner of Swallowtail Culinary Adventures, and she's also an accomplished chef and sommelier as well. Robin, hello there and welcome.
Hi. Nice to be here.
I know. I wish that people who are sitting watching right now could appreciate the aromas that I'm enjoying right now as well. But before we get into the mushrooms, how did all of this start for you?
I started Swallowtail, my company, about 15 years ago. And we did a lot of pop-up restaurants. So one of my favorite pop-up restaurants was a wild mushroom forage dinner. And the guests just wanted to know about how they could do it themselves, right? So I started doing food education. So I harvest my own sea urchin, I dive for that, I harvest my own kelp, and then mushrooms. And people are super excited about mushrooms, but they're nervous, right? So we started about 10 years ago, taking people out and just doing mushroom identification classes. So teaching people about poisonous mushrooms as well as edible ones that are good for beginners to start with, that don't have poisonous lookalikes.
Okay, well, I think it would be very important to have a guide, especially when you're just starting out. But where do you go locally?
So you can go anywhere that isn't a park. So it's illegal to harvest in BC parks.
Oh, I know some people that go out near UBC, know the woods very well. But okay, so illegal, like even North Shore Mountains,
any park zone is off limits for harvest. You can go, like that's where a classroom is great. So where you can go out and actually just do your identifications, but just not harvesting to take home.
I see. So what would a typical day involve then, a swallowtail tour?
So it's usually a 2-hour class. I bring lots of mushroom samples like we have on display here so that people are like getting used to what things look like, what they smell like. You should, try the lobster mushroom.
Okay, well, let's see what we got.
This one right here. Pick it up, smell it.
Pick up, and look at the color, first of all. Like this, I was looking at these displays, and this looks like something you would find at the bottom of the sea, you know, like in a coral reef or something like this. It is gorgeous. Okay, so we've got texture. Like, is this entirely edible?
Yes, cooked.
This is lobster?
Yes.
Of course, yes, okay. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
All right.
So smell, and you should get sort of a seafoody thing.
It is, yes, it does have, there I go again, seafloor. Okay, so what other varieties have you brought in?
So we have some combs tooth, some porcini. So everyone, yum, yum, yum.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay.
And those ones are coming up now. So that's a great one.
And this does look coral-like, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's just gorgeous. Okay, what's this one?
So it's related to lion's mane. It's Hericium is the genus, and it's combs tooth. So it'll be growing off dead wood, basically, in the forest. So you can find those sort of glowing white growing off dead logs. And they're a great one for beginners because nothing looks like them.
Okay,
that's poisonous.
So that's the key. So do you take along a book? Would it be wise to do a course like this first? But this, I mean, it's potentially dangerous.
Yes, yes.
I mean, no, deadly, even.
Exactly.
Deadly.
So a 101, like that's what our class is meant to be. It's to take you out and give you like a 101 basics about how to identify Pacific Northwest mushrooms, because a lot of handbooks and stuff are made for, let's say, California, right? So they can be misleading for our area.
I see. Well, and we've had California-like weather all summer as well. It has been warm, it has been dry. So when is going to be the best season for foraging?
Well, a lot of the times after a hot, dry stretch, what I find is when we get a bit of rain, it's just like a bloom. So mushrooms, the fungi are looking to fruit then. So you could get like a massive fruit. And we're already seeing porcini, we're already seeing cauliflower mushrooms pop up, and lots of others. So it's started.
What's this one here, this dark one?
That's a blue chanterelle.
Oh, isn't that gorgeous? Okay. What would be, is there an identifying fact for the ones that are dangerous?
Yeah, so there's thousands of different species of mushrooms. Very few of them are deadly poisonous. But learn your poisonous ones first is a good rule of thumb, right? So, I mean, the focus for someone that's looking to harvest is for me, it's about finding ones that don't look anything like those
Yes,
poisonous
that's
ones.
what you're saying. Okay.
Right?
go
So,
for it.
like the Amanita group of mushrooms. So that genus is a good genus to get to know because it has a lot of the really deadly poisonous ones in it. So start with learning about that one, even before you learn about the edibles.
All right. What I would love, I know you've got a little bit of a stovetop set up here. So what are you preparing?
So we've got wild mushrooms. So we've got lobster mushroom. We've got cauliflower for you. I've poached that and I've cooked the lobster mushroom really well, and then matsutake.
When you say you've cooked it well, how?
So I've cooked the lobster mushrooms in butter.
Yes.
So
just fry pan.
sauteed. Yeah.
And what have you brought here?
Oh, and this is bull kelp. So I smoked bull kelp to make the dashi stock for you today. So that's the smoky sort
That
of.
really is smoky and seaworthy for sure. Okay, so this is your basic.
Yep. And so I'm just going to pour the hot liquid over top.
And how did you prepare the liquid?
So the dashi stock is made just with, I boil water. I put the kelp in after I've smoked it.
Yes.
And then I turn it off, leave it for 15 minutes, and then take that out. So it's just seaweed.
How do you smoke kelp? In a smokehouse, and you're at home in a barbecue, or what do you do?
I usually smoke it. I have a place on Galliano, so I make a little fire. I put the seaweed to the side of the fire because otherwise it'll flame pretty quickly.
Yes.
And then you can put things over like a little pot lid or whatever to
capture
trap
the
the smoke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall I spoon
Go
or
for it.
fork with this?
And try each one. So the matsutake, the lobsters, sort of separately, so you get the idea.
That is so delicate.
Yeah.
It's delicate, and when you think about sort of the mustiness that mushroom can bring, this has a gorgeous, delicate flavor as well. I don't know, I can't put them all in my mouth, but I see.
There's so many. The matsutake has a distinctive cinnamon and earth. That's this one right here. This is the most expensive mushroom that we export, practically.
Okay. How much would expensive?
You could, if for a prime one that's in a button stage, a wholesaler might get it for, let's say, $40 a pound, a really nice one. But a lot of our exports go to Asia. So
I noticed you didn't talk about truffles.
no, I didn't, because I think those are a separate category of fungi all to themselves, and that's not until later in the winter.
Is that right? Yeah. Have you ever searched for truffles yourself?
I'd need a dog or a pig.
Yes. And you don't have a dog or a pig?
I don't have a dog or a pig, so I buy them.
Robin, this is absolutely gorgeous. It is delicate, it is flavorful, and it's British Columbia, right?
Yeah.
These are tastes of British Columbia.
Totally.
Thank you so much for shining the light on Swallowtail and your tours, and happy foraging.
Yeah, you too.
I'm no prophet, but I've seen things.
If you'd like to go and see some live music, Vancouver's very own Rockers 5440, they're back this time at the Commodore Ballroom, October 7th. And Indo-Canadian rapper AP Dillon plays Rogers Arena, October 8th.
Hey, I'm Grant Lawrence with something a little different for you this week. Did you know, trivia fans, that Saturday, October 1st, 2022 is the 50th anniversary of the premiere episode of one of the most iconic and long-running TV shows in Canadian history? Oh, that theme and those images of West Coast Canadian living still churns me back to my childhood. Yes, the Beachcombers is turning 50, first airing on October 1st, 1972, set in Gibsons, BC. The salty 30-minute dramedy ran for 19 years. That's over 350 episodes from 72 to 90. It was shown in over 40 countries worldwide, and the show has had a lasting impact on Canadian culture and music ever since.
Let's cut down the chat and kick out that cat.
Yeah, there's just a few of the Canadian bands that took influence from the Beachcombers TV show over the years. Now, one of the most groundbreaking elements of the show was casting First Nations as equals, partners, and stars of the Beachcombers. One of those leads, Pat John from the local Seashell First Nation, who famously played Jesse Jim with grace, kindness, and humor for decades, died earlier this year.
You're a lucky man, my friend. You got a nice family.
We're all family, Nick. Don't you forget it.
And even I have a personal Beachcombers story that helped shape my life. Back when I was in grade 2, I came here to the CBC for a field trip, and our class met none other than Beachcombers star Jackson Davies in the lobby. He said, "Hey, does anybody know who I am?" And I raised my hand and I shouted, "You're Constable from the Beachcombers." And he replied, "You're right, kid. You might just have a future at this place." And guess what? I just celebrated my 25th year working here at the CBC. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, it's none other than Jackson Davies from the Beachcombers.
You know, I remember like it was yesterday, this little fat kid with the Edmonton Oilers hockey jersey on, waving at me. It was,
I was a skinny kid with glasses and a Canucks jersey.
No, I was pointing at the guy in the Oiler jersey, the kid in the Oiler jersey.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you all the same, Jackson Davies, legend of Canadian television.
Sorry. Is that legal?
I got it off the internet.
Yeah.
Be sure to watch classic episodes of the Beachcombers. You can find them on YouTube or the Friends of the Beachcombers Facebook group. I'm Grant Lawrence.
And I'm Jackson Davies.
And we'll check in with you again soon.
Coming up, BC conservationists in search of armies of frogs and snake dens. We will take you along on the discovery. Welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Did you know that BC is home to snakes that hunt in the ocean, frogs that change color, and salamanders that aren't slimy at all? Now, a pair of conservationists introduce us to some charismatic little critters.
I've loved reptiles for as long as I can remember. And I think what draws me to them and what fascinates me most about them is how they continually surprise me with the places that they exist and inhabit, and also the amazing adaptations they've developed to thrive all over the world. Today, I've come to this coastal grassland to look for garter snakes. So I've just been looking around this grassland area, seeing if I can find any snakes. And when I was walking along the cliff, I saw one just head down towards the beach. So we're gonna go down there and see if we can find out what it's up to. Wow. I honestly can't believe what I'm seeing right now. These snakes are swimming into the water. You know, they've come down from the grasslands up above, across the beach, over the kelp, and into the ocean. And they're diving and kind of slinking and slithering their way through the kelp beds. And they're actually really beautiful swimmers. It's incredible to see. They're holding their breath for up to a number of minutes at a time before they're poking their heads back up above water to take stock of what's around them and get prepared to dive again.
Although landlocked populations of garter snakes are known to hunt in freshwater, relatively little is known about their coastal counterparts. But this kelp foraging behavior does seem to be unique to garter snakes that live along the Salish Sea. When you see a snake flicking their tongue like this, they are essentially tasting the air. Garter snakes have poor eyesight and rely heavily on their excellent senses of taste and smell to navigate, locate prey, and identify possible predators. When they catch a fish, like this gunnel, they bring it out of the water, and their mildly venomous saliva helps to paralyze their prey before swallowing it whole. Their bottom jaws are separated into two halves, so they can even swallow prey larger than their own heads, like this one.
So it's pretty late in the afternoon now, and I've spent all day chasing snakes around the intertidal zone on this beach. For me, life doesn't really get any better than this. I would have been totally satisfied just hanging out, watching them swim in the kelp beds all day. But to be able to witness hunting behavior from a species that isn't known to typically hunt in saltwater environments was really, really cool and something that I'll never forget.
So one of the most common reptile species that we have here on southern Vancouver Island is the European wall lizard. And on a hot day like today, we're seeing them all over the place.
As the name suggests, European wall lizards aren't native here in BC. They're an invasive species whose population has exploded across this part of Vancouver Island. Although their true impact on the ecosystem has not been well studied, invasive species do often have serious consequences on native reptiles and amphibians. We see this with other species, from bullfrogs to red-eared slider turtles, which often came from released pets.
So just because they're a non-native species doesn't mean we can't appreciate them. I absolutely love seeing them hunting, where they dart around after insects. They're so fast. We just need to make sure that we don't release any more non-native species into the environment.
Now that we've shown you two reptiles, we're going to show you two amphibian species that are native to BC.
Hey Ryan.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the difference between amphibians and reptiles?
Definitely. So the way that I like to remember the difference between amphibians and reptiles are that amphibians are slimy and reptiles are scaly. Also, amphibians are born with gills, whereas reptiles are born with lungs. But as expected with nature, there are some exceptions to this rule.
I found one.
This adorable little critter is the western redback salamander. Now, while the majority of amphibians lay eggs in water, these little rule breakers lay their eggs on the forest floor. This makes them truly terrestrial, spending their whole lives on land. They lay their eggs in kind of like little nests, which they bury and hide. Western redback salamanders are found on forested slopes of Vancouver Island and the lower mainland of BC. They're most active in wet weather and love eating everything from spiders to worms. They even communicate with each other through scent markings. So if they want to know if another salamander's using their log, well, they just give it a sniff. These salamanders are absolutely prolific in this forest. We found over 20 of them in just a couple of hours of searching, which I wasn't expecting at all. I also wasn't expecting them to be so cute. Individuals find moist microhabitats to hang out in, something like this. So they do this in order to maintain hydration, which is essential for absorbing oxygen through their skin.
All amphibians are what we call indicator species. This means that they are particularly sensitive to environmental change, and a decrease in their population can warn us of potential concerns in their ecosystems.
There are 10 species of frog in BC, but only 2 of them are tree frogs.
The most common tree frog in BC is the Pacific tree frog. They grow to a maximum of 5 centimeters long and are camouflage experts, so don't worry if you've never seen one. Pacific tree frogs are able to change the color of their skin, and the possibilities range from a dull brown to a bright green. The color change is caused by variations in temperature and humidity, and the frogs have no control over the change. My favorite thing about these frogs is their feet. They have little sticky pads on each toe to allow them to efficiently climb on just about any surface in the forest.
So Connell, this has been quite different than your usual birding adventures. What have you thought of it?
I am fully converted. I absolutely love the reptiles and the amphibians. I hadn't expected this to be as amazing as it was, and yeah, I'm a little bit obsessed with them now.
Yeah, and to think like we've only scratched the surface. I kind of want to keep going and looking for more. I'm gonna go find more. See you later. Finish the video.
Hi, my name is Shayna and this is our Vancouver.
Coming up, family is at the heart of Harrison Mooney's new memoir, Invisible Boy. Hi, welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, an award-winning journalist is the Vancouver Public Library's writer-in-residence. Harrison Mooney has just released his new memoir. It's called Invisible Boy, and it's about the impact of growing up Black in a white family. I had a chance to speak with the author on the CBC afternoon radio show On the Coast.
I think I had the idea for it when I was in my early 20s, but at that point, I hadn't met my biological mother. I hadn't really done the work of looking back. I hadn't gone to therapy. The story wasn't ready. And I thought, well, I'll just make it a bunch of anecdotes from my life and maybe they'll amount to something. But it became clear that, this story is still being written. It's not over and it's just, it hasn't ripened yet. These stories kind of fall from the tree one day and then it's time to tell them. And, this one did, a few years ago, but it was my fourth or fifth attempt to tell this same story, and it was finally ready. It really felt like living in a different reality than my own family. I would tell them about things that happened to me. I went to the coffee shop and somebody called me a little black waif, and they would say, well, what did you do? And why would she have done that if you hadn't been dancing in line or being disrespectful or what have you. And when I kind of batted away all of the attempts to put the blame back on me, then we would pivot to, something spiritual. It would be, well, maybe this person was demon possessed, or maybe you sinned and the spirit rose up in this person and that's why they did it. And, it really seemed like there was just such a willingness to go around the obvious truth about what was happening in those situations. It's pretty cut and dry when somebody calls you a little black waif out of nowhere at a Tim Hortons. Well, this is a racist incident, but nobody really wanted to acknowledge that. They wanted to keep me in this world where we don't see color and, we don't play the race card. And, that's, I get that approach, but at the same time, my blackness is a huge part of who I am. And when I was young and I tried to make that not so, I couldn't. So, as time went on and I'd kind of developed a wealth of experience in just being a black person in a white space, it became clear that, I needed to have certainty for myself. And I couldn't rely on my parents or my brothers or the people at my church or even in the people in my community to corroborate my experiences, to really see me. And so, that's why this book is called Invisible Boy. I was there, I was very visible, but in terms of my interior life, which is a real life, nobody saw that, nobody acknowledged that, nobody wanted to believe that. And, I'm not surprised that it led to a lifelong obsession with telling my story and making sure that people understood where I was really coming from. So my first meeting with my birth mother, Trinika, in the book, because we changed her name. She was such a remarkable person. And, we met at Being Around the World, just down the way here at Cambie and Hastings. And, I'd been told, well, sometimes when you meet your birth mom, it doesn't go so great, or she's just going to want money from you, or, I'd really been kind of poisoned against the idea. And then when she walked in, she looked exactly like me. She mirrored my face so completely. We both laughed. I was like, "You're just me in a wig." She was anxious in the same way that I was. She was fidgety in the same way that I was. It became so clear that my ADHD, which was just kind of this weird, mysterious thing growing up that nobody knew how to manage, she had it, and she already had all kinds of strategies to deal with it. And it became clear that if I had grown up in her house or in her presence, I would have had context for that part of me and context for my blackness and, for why my face looks the way that it does or my body shape, all of these things that just felt really unreal to me that didn't become real in my mind until I saw them reflected in my mom. It was love at first sight, and it was just, it was such a relief after a difficult life, but it was also, it just remade me. Right away I felt confident to be who I was, and I felt beautiful for the first time. I felt like a completely different person just for meeting her that one time. I really thought I was going to have to impress her. I waited until I'd gone to college and until I really felt like I had something to show for myself, and then it turned out that she'd kind of been doing the same thing. Like, I'm trying to get my life together so that you won't be embarrassed by me. And I realized, yeah, you and I are exactly the same. We're people pleasers, and we really feel like we aren't enough. And then, you meet someone for whom you are absolutely enough, and they have that same need to be told, hey, you're enough, because of course they do. We were one another. So, yeah, it was just, wow, it was amazing. And it really wasn't until I thought about some of the things that had happened to me happening to my children that I realized, I've been abused. This isn't how you treat people. I would never do that to my son. I would never do that to my daughter. And, on top of that, as afraid as I am to tell this story, they need to see that when you're scared or when you feel just silenced by the people around you, you've got to push through that. You've got to be strong. You've got to be courageous. And, I don't think that they necessarily understand that now, but, at some point they'll be reading grown-up books, and I want them to read my book and understand, I did this in large part so that people would understand them. People would understand what it's like to be black in a white space, and that they would understand what it means to be black. And they would learn that from their father, instead of having to learn that from a book after they've already been, after they've already left their house or whatever else. I wanted to give them what I didn't have, and that's still just a huge part of my motivation for bringing this story into the world.
When we bring you stories here at CBC Vancouver, we have award-winning photographers out capturing the images that say so much. The still images, they can add some context. They bring a lot more to the understanding of an event or an issue. So here are some of the latest from what happened this past week. And that's all for Our Vancouver for this week. I hope you can join me weekday afternoons on CBC Radio 1 for On the Coast. For now, bye-bye.